Three, two, one, here we go. RAINMAN'S Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also, interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey guys, it's the Rain Man with another episode for you today. I want to talk about the most recent World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland. But before I get into that, I just want to let you know that if you are part of the Rain Man's Take community already, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you're new to the program, welcome. I know you're going to love the content. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button down the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And also, if you could watch this video to the end, that helps me with the YouTube algorithm, which helps me get the word out to more people, which helps to get the conversation going. So with that being said, I really appreciate it and thank you very much. All right. So like I had mentioned, Davos, Switzerland, the 2024 World Economic Forum in Davos recently wrapped up, and it was filled with the typical calls to promote a new world order, hysterical comments about climate change and how we need to completely revamp our lifestyles to stave off disaster. And of course, some hints about their plans for us little people. Now, what stood out this year to me was that there were several very prominent speakers talking in a very negative light about the World Economic Forum. There were several very pointed criticisms of the forum as a whole and their plans. In a minute, I'll touch on some of those comments, but first I want to remind everybody of the forum's goals and what's potentially at stake for the world. This is from the WEF's president at the opening of the meeting. So this is I got this off of InfoWars, and the title of the article is, "We are on our way to a new order. WEF president declares at Davos." And this is by Jamie White from January 16th. Quoting here, "What are we able to keep on the positive side from the old order to bring into the new world?" World Economic Forum President Boris Brende made the remarks at the Davos 2024 conference in Switzerland in a discussion with Joe Biden's White House security advisor, Jake Sullivan, about how the world is experiencing a transitional phase of global governance. The post-World War II international order seems to be not that order anymore. We are on the way to a new order, so we are between orders, Brent told Sullivan. That's a mouthful right there. WEF founder Klaus Schwab echoed Brande's concerns Tuesday, saying governments and decision makers must break the cycle of nationalism and individualism to achieve its great reset objectives. Klaus Schwab says, "We risk becoming much more ego-centered on a national and individual level and wants to break that cycle." And so what I found fascinating was there was actually some pushback by Jake Sullivan, which I found surprising because Biden and many of his cabinet are full-on globalists. And it was also refreshing that the U.S. is not, at least overtly right now, throwing in the towel to become subservient to the World Economic Forum goals. From the conversation with the forum president that I just referred to, here are parts of Sullivan's response. WEF president, "We are on the way to a new order." Sullivan, "In a sharp, distinctive way, we are moving into a new era. At the heart of it will be many of the core principles and core institutions of the existing order." Sullivan disagreed with Brende's characterization that the neoliberal world order established in the aftermath of World War II will be replaced, but that the international order must be adapted to the new era the world is heading towards. "I think of this a little bit more of a transition of eras more than a transition of orders, but the two are kind of cousins of one another, Sullivan said. But I do think in a more sharp and distinctive way, we are moving into a new era, he continued. The post-Cold War era has come to a close. We're at the start of something new. We have the capacity to shape what that looks like. And at the heart of it will be many of the core principles and core institutions of the existing order adapted for the challenges we face today, he adds. Now, at the very least, it feels like the U.S. is still determined to lead the way in this transitional phase, but we'll see. Now, another topic of discussion was how to counter misinformation. And during a discussion at the forum, the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal stated her frustration that us proles are not listening to the mainstream media anymore, and they need to figure out how to regain the trust of the citizens. And here's another interesting article about that. This one was titled, "We Own the News, Wall Street Editor-in-Chief Laments Death of Public Trust in Mainstream Media." And this was by Jamie White, and this was on January 20th of this year. Quoting, "Nowadays, people can go on all sorts of different sources for the news, and they're much more questioning about what we're saying," says Emma Tucker at the Davos summit. The Wall Street Journal's editor-in-chief, Emma Tucker, reminisced about a better time when the public unquestioningly believed anything the mainstream media told them, lamenting that those days are over. Tucker explained Friday at the forum's annual Davos meeting that the rise of alternative media has destroyed the corporate media's monopoly on information. If it said it in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, then that was a fact. Nowadays, people can go to all sorts of different sources for the news, and they're much more questioning about what we're saying. So it's no longer good enough for us to say this is what happened or this is the news. We almost have to explain our working. So readers expect to understand how we source stories. They want to know how we go about getting these stories, she continued. We have to sort of lift the bonnet, as it were, in a way that newspapers aren't used to doing and explain to people what we're doing. We need to be much more transparent about how we go about collecting the news, Tucker added. I found that very, very interesting. Now, do you really think the New York Times, the LA Times, or the Washington Post have any desire or motivation to change the way they regurgitate leftist propaganda? I don't see that happening anytime soon, and that's why they will continue to struggle. They'll continue to lose viewership, and they'll be forced to lay off employees like they're doing now. It seems the citizens are no longer buying what they're selling, and thank goodness as far as I'm concerned. And then finally, here's a subject that really got people's attention. And although the forum has stated that this is not their official position, even though it was on their website, I believe this individual said the quiet part out loud. And here's a refresher for you. And I got this from Wikipedia's website, and it was titled, "You will own nothing and you'll be happy." This was a phrase originating in a 2016 video by the World Economic Forum, summarizing an essay written by Danish politician Ida Auken. The phrase has been used by critics to accuse the forum of desiring restrictions on ownership of private property. In 2016, Auken published an essay originally titled, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, I have no privacy, and life has never been better." Later, it was retitled, "Here's How Life Could Change in My City by the Year 2030. On the WEF's official website. It described life in an unnamed city in which the narrator does not own a car, a house, any appliances, or any clothes, and instead relies on shared services for all of his daily needs. Auken later added an author's note to the story, responding to critics, stating that it is not her utopia or dream of the future, and that she intended for the essay to start discussions about technological developments. Nice way to cover her ass there, I think. So let me give you a real world example of what they're referring to there. As I just read regarding Agenda 2030, where citizens won't own anything and think property here, and that they'll be happy. So Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager on earth, with almost $10 billion in assets under management. He also sits on the forum's leadership board. Well, BlackRock over the last several years has been buying up thousands and thousands of single-family homes and billions of dollars of apartment buildings. Now think about that, and then about how they've stated that they don't want us to own anything, especially BlackRock, who looks to be one of the largest landlords in America. Now, as an aside, here's some great hyperbole from BlackRock at this meeting. Here's what BlackRock's Vice Chairman Philippe Hildebrand had to say. So I took this article off of Breitbart News, and the title was BlackRock Chief Warns Davos Elites, Trump Victory Poses Fundamental Challenge to Europe. This was by Simon Kent on January 17th. The prospect of a Donald Trump return to the White House in 2024 poses a fundamental challenge to Europe, the leader of the world's largest investment company warned Tuesday. The Daily Telegraph reports BlackRock Vice Chairman Philippe Hildebrand issued his caution from the sidelines of the forum in Davos, Switzerland. In doing so, he added his voice to the swelling chorus from Europe that fears a Trump return to the world stage. The veteran Swiss banker said the re-election of the former U.S. president would challenge Europe fundamentally, given Trump's determination to embrace America first in matters from trade to diplomacy, NATO funding, and climate policy. Hildebrand, a member of the firm's Global Executive Committee, was responding to recent comments by Christine Lagarde, the head of the European Central Bank, who said Trump posed a clear threat to Europe because his divergent views set him apart from the European mainstream, the report sets out. For his part, Hildebrand urged Europe to seize the opportunity to transform itself into a technological superpower that was less dependent on America. He added Europe's capabilities on defense were just not there and required a rethink. Hildebrand said, "I see it as an opportunity for the construction of Europe." Now, so getting back to the goals of the World Economic Forum, they envision a world controlled by joining the forces of government and private corporations, controlling all aspects of life. This is the definition of fascism, and it is my contention that only a tyrannical style of governance, whether it be socialism, fascism, or communism, could control something as disparate as the countries of the world. Always remember, when they say they want global equity, that means everyone will be poorer so as to be more easily controlled. Advanced countries would have to be brought down to the poorer ones. It is impossible to go the other direction. The globalists don't want that because successful sovereign countries are very difficult to control from the outside. But that seems to be the goal of the forum, to have nations not necessarily give up their sovereignty overtly, but to have their government and business leaders promoting the goals and agendas of the forum. A soft coup of sorts to remove power from duly elected politicians. Now, you could see something like that potentially happening in the U.S. because of how prevalent money and influence are in elections, and also how conjoined right now government and big business are in the United States. Now, as an aside, David Rubenstein, who's the CEO of the Carlyle Group, is also on the forum's leadership board. And the Carlyle Group's partners include several former U.S. presidents, and I'm sure that group is very influential in U.S. politics. Now, even the South American socialist Pope Francis is getting into it. So I got this article also from Breitbart, and it was titled, Pope Francis Calls on WEF to Promote Far-Sighted Globalization. This is from Thomas Williams on 18 January. Pope Francis has urged members of the World Economic Forum meeting at Davos this week to promote far-sighted and ethically sound models of globalization. The World Economic Forum aims to guide and strengthen political will and mutual cooperation, the pontiff told them, and provides an important opportunity for multi-stakeholder engagement to explore innovative and effective ways to build a better world. The process of globalization has by now clearly demonstrated the interdependence of the world's nations and peoples, the Pope said, and thus has a fundamentally moral dimension. It is essential to promote far-sighted and ethical sound models of globalization, which by their very nature must entail subordinating the pursuit of power and individual gain, be it political or economic, to the common good of our human family, he said. The WEF interpreted the Pope's words as an endorsement of its Great Reset program and highlighted the similarities between their visions. In an article titled, Here's the Pope's Prescription for Resetting the Global Economy, in response to COVID-19. The WEF said that Francis had put his stamp on efforts to shape what's been termed a great reset of the global economy in response to the devastation of COVID-19. Pope Francis has issued a scathing indictment of neoliberalism. The WEF declared a philosophy espousing austerity, privatization, deregulation, unbridled markets, and relatively weak labor laws. So there's basically an example of what you expect to hear from members of the forum. Now, to the point of this episode, the fact that so many countries are speaking out against the plans and desires of a small cabal of self-proclaimed elites is refreshing, and I hope it will be enough to stop this slow roll. In my view, this is why Trump and others, like the new Argentine president, Javier Milei, are so important. They are publicly against this type of soft takeover. As far as I'm concerned, a strong America equals a prosperous world. It's something I find very interesting. Why would people who oppose the WEF's mission be invited if they're not on board with their plans? Are they there just as tokens for the forum to say, look, we're all about open dialogue on the issues of the day? Now, I wonder if those people are going to be invited back next year. We'll see. I want to share just a few of the highlights of what I'll call the resistance. First is from Dr. Kevin Roberts, who's the president of the Heritage Foundation. And I got this article from InfoWars, and the title was Heritage Foundation President to World Economic Forum. You are part of the problem, and it's absurd to call Trump a dictator. This is by Kellen McBreen on January 19th. During a recent speech at the annual WEF meeting at Davos, Switzerland, the Heritage Foundation president, Dr. Kevin Roberts, scolded the unelected body for attempting to usurp the sovereignty of nations across the globe. Dr. Roberts was invited to speak on a WEF panel Thursday where he used the opportunity to suggest the group is not doing a good job of protecting democracy and is instead part of the problem. The very reason I'm here at Davos is to explain to many people in this room and who are watching, with all due respect, nothing personal, you are part of the problem, he told a crowd of globalists. Political elites tell the average people that the reality is X, when in fact, reality is Y. A moderator asked Roberts what he thought about the WEF standing up for liberal democracy, and he responded, "It's laughable that you or anyone would describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy." He continued, saying, "Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. Elites also tell us public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you the lack of public safety damages not only the American way of life, but their lives. Elites tell us we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change. The solutions, the average person knows, costs more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problems themselves," he added. When asked if he thinks Donald Trump will seek retribution against his political opponents, Roberts said it was laughable to use the word dictatorship when discussing Trump, saying, "I think that's absurd." Near the end of his time speaking, Roberts told the forum, "I will be candid and say that the agenda that every single member of the next administration needs to have is to compile a list of everything that's ever been proposed at the World Economic Forum and object to all of them wholesale." Pretty damning. Now, obviously, I can't imagine that guy's going to be invited back next year. And then there's Argentina's president hit the nail on the head on what I was saying earlier. And I'll read this from part of his speech at the WEF. And this was from Breitbart. The article is actually titled "Venezuela's Maduro, Javier Milei World Economic Forum speech is shameful expression of Nazi ideology." And this was from Christian Caruso on January 19th. Socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro lashed out against Argentine President Javier Milei on Thursday evening over Milei's condemnation of socialism during his participation in the World Economic Forum in Davos. Milei participated this week in the annual gathering of the World Economic Forum, delivering a roughly 20-minute speech in which he fiercely condemned socialism, explained how socialism ultimately leads to poverty, and issued a concise warning to the Western world that the Western world is in danger from leftists who have co-opted government institutions meant to uphold Western ideals to further their socialist agendas. I am here today to tell you that the West is in danger. It is in danger because those who are supposed to uphold the values of the West find themselves co-opted by a worldview that inexorably leads to socialism and consequently to poverty, Milei said at the opening of his speech. I think that you get the idea that there is a very serious push back happening right now. And then there's this article as well. This one was titled Defunding Elitists. GOP lawmakers propose ending funding to the World Economic Forum. And this is from Charlotte Hazard from January 20th. Republicans in the House recently introduced legislation to suspend funding for the World Economic Forum. No funds available to the Department of State, the United States Agency for International Development, or any other department or agency may be used to provide funding for the World Economic Forum, the bill simply states. The legislation was introduced by Representative Scott Perry, a Republican from Pennsylvania, along with others, including Tom Tiffany, Republican from Wisconsin, and Paul Gozer, a Republican from Arizona. The World Economic Forum doesn't deserve 1 cent of American funding, and it's past time we defund Davos, Perry said in a press release. The Defund Davos Act would ensure that U.S. tax dollars are not funding the World Economic Forum and their reset on our very way of life. I thank Congressman Perry for leading this important effort, Tiffany said. So the pushback is huge. Now, the Make America Great Again movement is labeled by critics as nationalistic, and the boogeyman argument states that this is what Hitler and Mussolini were promoting as well. Now, I would argue that those two tyrants wanted world domination, wanted their countries to rule the world because that they thought they were superior and to have other countries under their yoke. And I would say in the sense that Trump wants America to be a leader in the world again and to prosper and to continue promoting the values that have been so successful lifting people out of poverty over the last 100 years, that nationalism is a good thing in this case. Notice there's nothing about world domination or taking complete control of our government. Now, I see it as actually fighting against a global takeover that, if allowed to succeed, would lead to global fascism. I believe many other countries realize this, and Argentina and several other nations are against the motivations of the World Economic Forum as well. The Great Reset, heavily promoted during the COVID outbreak, and the Agenda 2030 programs all use the buzzwords as if they're consensus on all these issues. But as this latest meeting has shown, that is absolutely not the case. So even though I think there may be cracks in the forum's influence as more and more people learn what the end state could be, they are still very formidable and have a very long reach into governments and corporations around the world. Now, this description is from Wikipedia's website on the forum, and it says, the Foundation's stated mission is improving the state of the world by engaging business, political, academic, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industrial agendas. The forum states that the world is best managed by a self-selected coalition of multinational corporations, governments, and civil society organizations, which it expresses through initiatives like the Great Reset and the Global Redesign. Now, that is essentially fascism, the combining of government and corporations to control society. I believe the only way an international global governing body can rule is by fascism, which inevitably leads to tyrannical rule where freedoms are diminished and not celebrated. That is not how I want to live. I also believe it is impossible because the countries of the world are so different. Even though it sounds nice to want equity among the nations to share in prosperity, this type of governance will bring everyone down and not lift countries up to prosperity. Again, a prosperous country with a thriving economy and society does not need or want outside help. It is my take that these elites have no desire to lift countries up to prosperity, and the exact opposite, in fact. Here's a very interesting explanation of the forum's Great Reset from back in 2020. This is from opendemocracy.net website, and it's titled, "Conspiracy Theories Aside, There is Something Fishy About the Great Reset. It's a corporate takeover of global governance that affects our food, our data, and our vaccines." And this is from Ivan Wecke, and it was from August 6, 2021. The Great Reset conspiracy theories don't seem to want to die. The theories were triggered by the World Economic Forum summit last year, which had the theme, the Great Reset, and argued that the COVID crisis was an opportunity to address the burning issues facing the world. This is from opendemocracy.net website, and it was titled, "Conspiracy Theories Aside, There is Something Fishy About the Great Reset. It's a corporate takeover of global governance that affects our food, our data, and our vaccines." This is from Ivan Wecke, August 6, 2021. The Great Reset's conspiracy theories don't seem to want to die. The theories were triggered by the World Economic Forum summit last year, which had the theme, the Great Reset, and argued that the COVID crisis was an opportunity to address the burning issues facing the world today. Intrigued by the palaver around last year's summit, I decided to find out what the WEF's Great Reset plan was actually all about. At the heart of conspiracy theories are supposed secret agendas and malicious intent. While these may be absent from the forum's Great Reset initiative, what I found was something almost as sinister hiding in plain sight. In fact, more sinister because it's real and it's happening now. And it involves things as fundamental as our food, our data, and our vaccines. The magic words are stakeholder capitalism, a concept that Forum Chairman Klaus Schwab has been hammering for decades and which occupies pride of place in the Forum's Great Reset plan from June 2020. The idea is that global capitalism should be transformed so that corporations no longer focus solely on serving shareholders, but become custodians of society by creating value for customers, suppliers, employees, communities, and other stakeholders. The way the World Economic Forum sees stakeholder capitalism being carried out is through a range of multi-stakeholder partnerships, bringing together the private sector, governments, and civil societies across all areas of global governance. Here's the best part. The idea of stakeholder capitalism and multi-stakeholder partnerships might sound warm and fuzzy until we dig deeper and realize that this actually means giving corporations more power over society and democratic institutions less power. So there you have it. Now, and as I said before, I don't recall very many vocal critics getting this much coverage. And I do hope this trend continues and more countries and citizens wake up to the potentially disastrous futures if the plans of the World Economic Forum were to take hold. So that's it for now. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Tell me what you think in the comments sections, and I'll end it like I always do. If you're in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.